So as I mentioned a few times, so you kind of already know, I was a little overwhelmed coming into Shabbat today, and I think perhaps talking to some of you, you were too. And I was particularly overwhelmed by what to share with you this evening. There is a lot going on in the world. There's a lot that we could comment on. In this multi-week shutdown, so many of you are affected deeply by what's going on in our government, by what's going on here. And it's not to mention that there were big elections this week. So I could say things that like everyone could get mad at me about for some reason or another. I'll try not to do that. But no jokes aside, elections that can really affect our Jewish community, elections that affect our DMV community, there's a lot that we could bring up here this evening, and a lot that you all could bring in this evening. And so when I'm sort of overwhelmed, I do what normal people do, which is like either work out or eat a lot. But also, I look to our text. I look to the Torah, I look to Scripture to see if something is clear, if there's a clear message there for this week. And in this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayera, there is such a clear message. It could not be more clear. So the message for this evening. Parshat Vayera has like some of the most famous Torah stories that you can imagine, one of which is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so I heard some of you being like, I bet it was Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, Sodom and Gomorrah, which is a story of cities that had a lot of evil in them, had some wickedness. It says that a cry came out from Sodom and Gomorrah, and God heard that cry, went down to investigate that cry, saw so much evil in the world, in the cities, and sought out to destroy them. And so the question, because it's not enumerated in the text, the question that our rabbis and that many people have is, what was the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah that was so bad that God had to destroy the cities? And I'm just going to put out there right now, it is not the sin that Christian culture and modernity has put onto Sodom and Gomorrah, just so you know. The sin of of sexual immorality was not the main sin of Sodom according to our tradition, nor do we think those acts are immoral, just for the record. However, our rabbis go in a very different direction for what this sin was. And they use some wordplay, a grammar issue in the text to get there, which if you know me, you know is like my favorite thing of all. And so what it says is that God goes, hears this cry and then goes down to investigate the cry. But the second word is very weird. It's ha-kitsa-akata. Okay? So the end is a hey, it's like a h sound with a mapik, with a dot in the hey that makes you need to vocalize it. It doesn't work well. I just breathed onto you. It's gross, okay? And what that is telling you is that it's a yell with a feminine suffix, possessive suffix at the end, right? So it's her cry. So most normal biblical grammarians would say, all right, it's the cry of Sodom. A city is feminine in Hebrew. It's the cry of Sodom. That makes sense. Our rabbis were not typical grammarians. They want to make a story out of this, and they do, a really good story. They say, no, it must have been a female cry. It must have been a woman or a girl who was crying. And why might a girl cry in this city? And why might that cry lift up to God? And so they create multiple stories to answer this question, and I'm going to share an amalgamation of two of them with you. And this is from our Talmud. So the Talmud is the rabbis fighting between the years 200 and 800 to figure out how to live in our world without a temple. And they share that a decree went out throughout the land of Sodom and Gomorrah that said that no one should care for the poor, that no one should give money or food to the poor or the hungry. It was a law. No one was allowed to do it. And there was a young girl who every morning, it was her job in her house to take empty pitchers and go to the well to get water and bring them back. And she started seeing people on the streets hungry, and as she was going back and forth from the well. And so what she did is she took her pitcher, her empty pitcher as she was leaving, and started filling it with food. And as she went to the well, she started handing out food to people on the street. And then it says, in our Talmud, it says, the matter was discovered. The matter was discovered. And here was her punishment, and here I'm going to apologize for the graphicness of her punishment. It says, in our text, that she was covered in honey, put on the wall of the city, and left for hornets to devour her. That's what it says in our Talmud. It's like, it is striking. It is striking. And so I want to break this down for us. What was the sin of Sodom? First was that it was a systematic decision to not care for the poor and the hungry. It was a decision of leaders, of a government, to say, we cannot care for our poor and for our hungry. And then they made it shameful to do so. She wanted to hide it. She was scared, and so she hid it in her pitcher. And then when she was discovered, she was punished by her sweetness. It was her sweetness, her generosity. She's covered in honey, like the sweetest food you can possibly get, food that those people on the street would die for, and perhaps they were. She is covered in it and then devoured because of it. Her sin of Sodom, was that she was giving food, and then she became food. There are multiple sins of Sodom, but the main message that we get from this story is feed the hungry, And when things come up that mess up with that message, mess up with doing that activity, then something has gone so morally wrong that you need to start rethinking the way in which you're living. That's the message of Sodom and Gomorrah, so much that, let me tell you, I tried really hard not to preach on Sodom and Gomorrah tonight. It's like not my favorite story. This isn't fun, but it was glaring in my face. I had to, right? The message is to feed the hungry. So now, when I was in college, I studied public policy and community action, and I was taught, I felt like, that while community service was like nice and all, it's kind of like a Band-Aid for helping people. Like the real work is public policy, right? Like you really want to get in there and advocate and create law, yeah? Agreed, a little. Then I got to seminary, and HUC, our school, has a soup kitchen run out of the basement of the school. I was not interested in volunteering at the soup kitchen because I thought real change happened by making policy. However, a cute boy, who's now my husband, did want to volunteer at the soup kitchen. And so every Monday night, we would go down to the soup kitchen to volunteer because he wanted to do that and I wanted to be with him. And so what I found there was so much more than a Band-Aid. What I found there were volunteers, people who were students at HUC, but more so community volunteers who would be there every single Monday for 30 years to serve the clients of New York City, people who went through snow and rain, who went on nights of their kids' birthdays and their own birthdays to serve the clients of New York City. And I say clients because that's how we treated those who came into our kitchen. People who, some of which were living on the street, but most of which had a roof. They just had to decide between rent and food, and they were going to choose rent. Or they had to decide between having a cell phone, because you can't really get a job without a cell phone, and food. And so they chose the cell phone. These were people who were trying to make ends meet, but it just didn't work. What I found at that kitchen were volunteers, high schoolers and middle schoolers who would come in, and I became the educator for the soup kitchen, so I got to educate these kids on what they were doing, and I would teach them about how many of our clients were on SNAP benefits, and how at that moment, SNAP benefits were the average, if you were to only use SNAP benefits every day, the average you would have was $4 a day to feed yourself. $4 a day, now it's $6 a day. Well, right now it's nothing, but it's $6. And we would talk about what they ate that day and how far $4 would have made it through their day. Most of the time, they wouldn't get through breakfast, right? $4 would have been maybe half of their breakfast. But it certainly wouldn't have gotten them through dinner. We also talked about that feeling you get right before lunch and how you really can't concentrate on anything that's being taught to you right before lunch because you're so hungry, and what that might be like for some of their peers in their school who are on SNAP benefits and they didn't know that, or were not on SNAP benefits and were hungry throughout the day, and what that might feel like. This moment in our country is calling us to feed the hungry. That's absolutely what it is doing. That is what our tradition is telling us to do. That is what God is telling us to do. And we have some opportunities for you to do it. As you saw, some bins on the way in where you can drop off some goods. We actually did, as this was unfolding, we called Capital Area Food Bank and said, like, hey, listen, are you overrun with food? Like, we don't want to create more of a problem for you, but we would love to help if you need anything. And their answer was resounding. They did not have enough food. That this was a perfect storm of the shutdown of SNAP benefits and of the holidays coming, that they are very concerned about not having enough food moving forward. And so that is where our donations are going to. That's one option for you. There's also a food packing on November 19th that you can do if you want to get your hands a little dirtier. Or you can give food to your local food bank wherever you might be living in the DMV. Or also, I will say that there are some of you here who might be needing assistance, particularly because of the shutdown and because of layoffs. If that's the case, we really would love to help you. You can let us know. And if you know of people who are there, perhaps it's not giving donations of food to a food bank. Maybe it's asking to take your friend out for dinner. And it's a very dignified social event, but also you're paying for dinner, right? There are many ways in which we can successfully feed the hungry, but it's a must. It's a must in our tradition, it's a must in our community, and it's a must from God. That little girl is the hero of the Sodom and Gomorrah story for sure. And she's subversive, she's brave, and she puts it all on the line to make sure, because she wants the world to be a better place, because she sees people in need and wants to be compassionate towards them, wants to act with chesed, with loving kindness. That's what we're called to do. We're called to be a little subversive. We're called to be brave. We're called to act with chesed. And we're called to work towards a world that aims more for creation and less for destruction. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.